Anime? Pfft. Video games. Literally, who cares? We're here today to talk about one thing and one thing only, and it's a doozy. The socio-political motives present in portrayals of anthropomorphic characters in modern animation. So, this might sound strange, but I'm, really passionate about this kind of thing. An observation you'll find cited again and again if you read any academic papers about certain media portrayals is that in the same way the media someone produces reflects what the creator believes, the media we consume affects what we believe. It's for this reason that you'll find those prefaces and re-releases of old cartoons and stuff. This is harmful media, and it's important to know what you're showing your children, so no, it's not just a cartoon, random Twitter guy. What do you care? You've been mooching off of your parents' Disney Plus account for years. I wrote a paper specifically about how different portrayals of animals in movies and commercials can and have affected our perceptions of them, and I really wanted to find a copy of it sitting around somewhere so I could shamelessly reuse some of my points, but alas, I couldn't find it for the life of me, though I do remember much of it. One of my favorite revelations that I came to during the research for that paper was that I'm pretty sure King Kong saved gorillas from extinction. Here's the thing. Humanity wasn't aware of gorillas for that much longer than movies have existed, and suffice it to say, we weren't exactly keen on our archaic cousins once the movie scene exploded. For a long time, gorillas were the villains in any movie they'd show up in, something akin to the wolf's role in more recent times. People were delighted to root against apian enemies. "Thank goodness we're not like they are," moviegoers would croon at each other, I imagine. Gorillas would frequently be portrayed as monsters, unholy creatures with a lust for blood and flesh. Often they would commit egregious acts of sexual violence on screen, which is ridiculous because we all know what the ideal partner for a strapping young gorilla would look like. At the same time that gorillas' reputations were being lampooned on screen, real-life gorillas were being harpooned in jungles, as hunting gorillas was anything but unheard of. It wasn't until King Kong came out in 1933 that the majority of people were able to empathize with gorillas, and as a result of that film, we were able to grow just a bit closer to our animal co-stars on this great stage of life. But hey, that's just a theory. What's much more easily verifiable was the opposite effect Jaws had on the reputation of sharks when it released in 1975. Despite being an apt criticism of humanity's animalistic territorialism, many people's takeaway from that film was something along the lines of, "Holy crap! We gotta kill those dang sharks!" In the ensuing tidal wave of fishermen hunting sharks for sport, the population of large sharks off the east coast of the USA fell by a jaw-dropping 50%. So those are the stakes we're dealing with when we broach this kind of topic. Today, I'd like to meet our animal friends halfway, in a manner of speaking, and investigate a couple of examples of anthropomorphic characters, how their portrayals affect what we believe, and how authors can use anthro characters to approach the multitudes contained in the human soul. We're going to talk about Zootopia and Beastars. But first, I think it'd be pertinent to define exactly what I'm talking about, at least today, when I use the term anthro. You see, defined literally, anthropomorphic means given human traits, encapsulating pretty much any type of personification, but usually used when it comes to animals or other living things that we don't normally consider as intelligent as humans. Using that definition, this Urban Dictionary sentence is technically correct, but I think even a definition like that isn't very practical. So we're making a spectrum graph! On this side, we'll place the human, not anthro in any way. In the same vein, on the opposite side, we'll put an animal. This way, anything we place on the spectrum between these two figures will be, by definition, anthropomorphic, yet we'll be able to discern the intricacies that exist under that umbrella. On this left side, we'll put characters that are pretty much human, but with animal features. These characters will often be stated as not human, but they could probably pass as human if they wanted to. Over here, we'll put fictional characters that are pretty much just animals, but usually written with undeniable human-like intelligence. In the dead center, then, would be characters that are fictional non-human creatures that couldn't be mistaken as human, but can communicate and reason just as human can. Just as human can, nice one. But can communicate and reason just as humans can. I wanted to look at this subset of characters specifically since I find them the most interesting on this spectrum. Fictional animals like Pokemon carry a lot of the same appeal as pets in real life, and I can't think off at the top of my head of an example of an anthropomorphically augmented human character that I've found interesting because of their animal traits. But when it comes to anthro characters that are distinctly more animal than human, more often than not, there's a discernible reason why they are created or why their world is a certain way that captures my interest and my imagination. So let's dive into the world of anthropomorphic characters, starting with some classic Disney animation. Disney has dipped their toes into this type of character several times, most notably in recent years with Zootopia, but other examples appear in 1973's Robin Hood, all the DuckTales stuff, and anything that appears in the Mickey Mouse universe. Oh, and,
Chicken Little.
For many examples of anthropomorphic characters, their animal forms serve to reflect their human attributes. In Robin Hood, for instance, the king is a lion, the king of the jungle. Other typically lionish qualities like courage and bravery are exemplified in characters like Aslan from the Narnia books. Cunning foxes include Robin Hood and Nick Wilde, while wise owls appear in everything from Winnie the Pooh to Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's important to note, though, that these are all examples of human attributes being projected onto animals, while the phenomenon I'm more interested in goes the other way around, when a plot involving anthropomorphic characters centers around their animal natures, like in Zootopia.
Every time I close my eyes, I can still see those weird drawings of me.
Okay, so Zootopia is always listed as a comedy/adventure or a buddy cop movie, and it's always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, purely because none of that's the main reason why the movie fascinates me. It is pretty funny, and the whole mystery adventure is actually pretty solid for a kids movie. I used to be super bothered by what I saw as a massive plot contrivance, that being Manchester being targeted mid-interview with Judy, but it could have been written as an intentional hit orchestrated by Merriweather to make sure Judy finds Lionheart's evil lair. But the aspect of Zootopia that I cannot stop thinking about is its bizarre and occasionally unhinged connection with race, because the different animals in Zootopia are written as different races, right? Or at least they're written to encounter prejudice in many ways similar to how different types of people encounter prejudice in our real world.
Look, you probably can't read, Fox, but the sign says, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone."
Till finally she has no choice but to go back home with that cute fuzzy-wuzzy little tail between her legs to become... You're from Bunnyboro, is that what you said? So how about a carrot farmer?
We are really fighting the clock and every minute counts. Wait. They're all sloths? You said this was going to be quick.
Well, are you saying that because he's a sloth he can't be fast? Timberwolves. Look at these dum-dums. Bet you a nickel one of them's gonna howl. And there it is. I mean, what is it with wolves and the howling? Clearly there's a biological component? These predators may be reverting back to their primitive, savage ways?
I just stated the facts of the case.
You can only be what you are. Sly Fox, Dumb Bunny.
Tons of examples of animal prejudice appear in this movie. Because these animals are people, these stereotypes bring to mind, at least for me, real-life examples of racial stereotypes used to justify awful treatment of people from different cultures. The opening scene, where Judy explains the world's origins at this little assembly, reminds me of racial propaganda. Like, stuff from the Civil War era used to justify slavery.
And the predators had an uncontrollable biological urge to maim and maul and...
In the same way, the history Judy tells the audience is why the public feels justified in their fear of predators later in the movie. This is all done not to connect any particular animal with any particular race, but to reinforce the movie's themes about how prejudice and stereotypes affect all kinds of people. But I can't lie, I see this as an incredibly harmful direction to tread in a movie made for such a young audience. I hate to get up on my high horse here, but what you show to a kid, what they watch in the living room while you make supper, that affects what they think and what they believe. You and I might agree that as healthy adults, we can separate fiction from reality and observe a movie for what it is, but you need to remember, kids are pretty stupid. Their brains are literally still developing. I truly believe Elsagate saved an entire generation from mental insanity, disarming a nuclear bomb of clinically short attention spans and criminally low effort creation that we're still waiting to resurface and explode. But that's an issue for another day. For now, what exactly do I mean when I mention a harmful direction? Well, when you have this many examples of prejudice in your animated animal world that parallel real-life examples of prejudice, The message you're subtly communicating is that the groups of people who face prejudice in the real world are as different to one another as the different species in your animated animal world. An idea which is wrong and not correct. Like, I'm not crazy, right? Am I completely misinterpreting these moments as more than what they are? I don't think so, but I'd love to hear some more opinions on this. In the end, I don't think this is that harmful of a movie. Like, I doubt Disney Plus is going to ever put a warning before it like they would with Peter Pan or Dumbo. And ultimately, I think the possible damage Zootopia could inflict on impressionable minds is limited by the fact that it's just not that exciting. Like, especially to baby brains, there's not nearly as many action scenes or bright, colorful settings as other animated movies, even from the time. The Secret Life of Pets and Sing came out the same year, and I think the people who would most likely be affected negatively by this inferred by me messaging would be watching those. So the main kernel Zootopia is based around is inherently flawed, but does that mean that the movie is completely devoid of useful messages? Not necessarily. I mean, the message at the end of the movie has its heart in the right place. If you messed that one up, I wouldn't even know what to say.
And the more we try to understand one another, the more exceptional each of us will be. Try to make the world a better place. But change starts with you. It starts with all of us.
But more than just that, the bellwether twist effectively communicates a politically charged message to kids that, at least in my opinion, is, good. And now, for a brief plot recap. Officer Judy Hopps is put in charge of the case of an otter's disappearance, and along the way, she and her impromptu partner Nick discover a conspiracy of missing carnivores, all of which who have apparently reverted to their primitive, savage ways. Mayor Lionheart is behind the abductions, but through a twisty twist, it's revealed that Assistant Mayor Bellwether is the one who has been making the carnivores go savage, injecting them with a chemical that turns them violent. It's in the midst of this conflict that Zootopia's best scene occurs, depicting the societal unrest the idea that predators are inherently savage has brought about. This was Bellwether's goal. She knew that turning the prey population against predators will certainly oust Lionheart, entirely separate from his abduction scheme, and as she painfully explains through
Villain monologue,
she will continue to stay in power as long as the population fears predators.
But prey outnumber predators 10 to 1. 90% of the population united against a common enemy will be unstoppable.
Kinda unrelated to the whole video, but Bellwether is so incompetent in the scene, it's hilarious. You have the two main characters trapped in that exhibit thing. You have all of the power. Why did you call the ZPD before Judy was dead? If you waited, it was literally impossible for you to lose. I think the Bellwether twist might have worked a lot better if you saved the big action chase scene until after she was revealed as the villain. As it is now, she barely has any time to be enjoyable on screen, as an antagonist. She just explains her plan and gets arrested pretty much immediately. But besides how the twist is handled in the movie, I quite like the message that the movie delivers through the story itself. That being, of course, that uncaring politicians will do anything, including leveraging the fear of minorities to gain political power. Zootopia came out in 2016.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
They're coming from all over. They'll soon be coming, and probably already have, be coming from all over the world.
But I'm pretty sure it was just a coincidence. So while Zootopia isn't an amazing animated movie, I cannot fathom how it beat Moana and Kubo and the Two Strings for Best Animated Feature. I appreciate what it was trying to do and what it kind of did. Though for the particulars of this video, it didn't really use its anthropomorphic characters to the fullest extent. If you agree with everything I've said in this portion, then in certain aspects, the movie's anthropomorphic characters kind of detract from some of the messages they're trying to send. It's something interesting to chew on, right? To chew on, right? Beastars is a manga by Paru Itagaki, as well as a Netflix original anime. Weird through line for this channel to cover Netflix original anime in particular, which covers the high school career of Grey Wolf Legoshi, as well as a lot of stuff later that I won't really get into to avoid spoilers. Suffice it to say, the conflicts between herbivores and carnivores are at the center of much of the story. After all, the inciting incident of the series is an herbivore being devoured on campus. There's tons of intense drama, even some horror elements. The manga is stylized as anything, which is always a plus to me. For our purposes today, though, everyone in the world of Beastars is an anthropomorphic humanoid person corresponding to a particular animal. How exactly does Beastars use its anthropomorphic world to tell an engaging story for us humans? We might as well begin by covering a similar interpretation to our Zootopia analysis from earlier, that being the different classes of animals being representations of different races. There is a bit of precedent for this, but it's pretty weak. Still avoiding spoilers, but the final arcs of Beastars lean away from its original high school setting, with brief glances back to school life. In one particular arc, it's revealed that as tensions between herbivores and carnivores grow thicker, discussions are being made about separating the carnivores and herbivores into different classes. However, the students vote to stay intermingled in a show of unity. This is the only moment where this particular interpretation would have any relevance, and it only makes sense if it was like a criticism of segregated schools. As an American, I have to admit that I don't know if segregation is a problem in Japanese schools, but the connection doesn't feel that strong regardless, right? I instead thought that these anthropomorphic characters might be being used to critique the Japanese schooling system and how its rigorous nature in the hope of producing good workers often strips children of their very humanity. Funnily enough, this has always been one of my favorite interpretations I've heard people have for Danganronpa, of all things. However, I think this interpretation of Beastars fails, at least to me, because the setting never really comes across as Japan. And that's not for any ecological or architectural reason, but more so the names. There are main characters with names like Bill and Louie, and even Lugosi's name actually comes from Hungarian-American actor Bela Lugosi. For those first two interpretations, there's not that much to say, but that really cannot be said about what I would call Beastars' most infamous aspect. You see, Beastars is not only about Lugosi's high school life, as a large portion of the series, especially early on, focuses on his love life, specifically with Haru the rabbit. And if you've seen anything from Beastars, it is this image: the enormous carnivorous wolf paired with the small defenseless rabbit, perhaps in some sort of contrived romantic scenario, and the inescapable, oppressive feeling of dread that comes along with it. They ask all of the questions you'd expect them to in the series, too. Is Lugosi in love with Haru? Or does Lugosi want to eat Haru? Like, a lot. Or is it a fetish?
Oh, maybe it's one of those fetishes?
My ridiculous fetishes. I'm just a rampaging pervert.
Much of the series' early tension is derived from this will they won't they dynamic. As in, will they show it on screen when Haru is inevitably killed and devoured, and won't they think of the children? But amid my recent rewatch of the series, during a particular dramatic scene, a thought occurred to me. Perhaps in the meta-narrative language of Beastars, eating someone is a parallel to...
Sex! One sex! Ah!
Admittedly, I'm not the type of person who does a ton of, shall we say, fandom research about things I watch or read or play. So often I'll hear about stuff from the fandoms of shows or movies that I love that are a regularly accepted trope of the fandom, and I've just never heard of them. I think the most prominent example of this type of thing, at least in recent memory, is the Atsumu Kiyumi ship from Haikyuu. For those unaware, this is a duo of characters that didn't interact at all until the final chapters of the series. And even then, they don't interact too much, and the fandom latched on and was just obsessed with this pairing in particular. Like, I've read the manga and it makes sense, you know, considering typical anime tropes and whatnot, but the sheer multitude of works involving this pair is so totally disproportionate to their shared screen time that it made the world take notice. The whole pandemic also played a huge part in it, but that's neither here nor there. All this to say that it's totally possible, probable even, that this is not an uncommon take. Maybe even common knowledge, but I don't really educate myself on fandom stuff, so let's just run with it a bit, okay? If you follow this train of thought, then the devourings that are a constant source of danger for small herbivores in the Beastars world become something akin to acts of sexual violence. There are two prominent reasons I like this interpretation, those being two moments or arcs that I believe are heightened by the added subtext the interpretation provides. Firstly is the on-campus murderer revealed. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, it's the bear who mysteriously grows more prominent literally just as Lugosi begins his mystery-solving adventure. Yeah, it's really lame while also being completely obvious that he's the only possible candidate, and also his name is Riz.
Rizzler.
Riz, the grizzly bear, devoured Tem the alpaca while in a withdrawal-fueled haze, and he mistakenly remembers the encounter as a beautiful bonding moment, where Tem consented to and encouraged the devouring. Now, I don't want to delve into the twisted effed up psychology of some hypothetical sexual predator more than I have to, so I won't. Suffice it to say that Riz's mistaken interpretation of the encounter mimics the defense that many inhuman creatures in the real world have taken to using when their monstrous behavior is brought to light. In a later moment, during Legoshi and Riz's bathroom battle, Riz proclaims that devouring is the only way the two species can truly connect, and Legoshi counters by saying, "Only love can overcome the divide between species." This back and forth, when read with our interpretation, deepens the conflict between Riz and Legoshi to much more than what I initially had read it as. The second thing that this interpretation heightens is Legoshi's relationship with Louie the red deer. Now, you'll probably know what I'm talking about even if you've only seen the first few episodes of the anime, but Legoshi and Louie kind of have this strange tension between them that's kind of impossible to ignore. It's similar to the Atsumu-Kiyumi pairing we talked about earlier with their trope compatibility, what Legoshi with his kind-hearted strength, and Louie with his inordinately abrasive attitude hidden behind his valedictorian persona. But I would argue it goes a lot deeper than that, and to truly get into it, we're gonna have to derail this train a bit. As somebody who watches a modest amount of anime and other shows and movies, I am quite familiar with shipping culture. I know that whenever there are two people in the same room at one time, somebody ships them. But I found that the greatest span of believability or quality in a ship, if that's what you view quality as, is more often than not found in LGBTQ ships. Though I absolutely chalk up the statistic to my propensity for seeking out these ships, so take that with a grain of salt. You'll have ships where there's practically nothing to go on, like Atsumu-Kiyumi, or you'll have ships where it's practically canon, like Ace Attorney's Narumitsu. And on this spectrum of fanon to canon, words cannot express how much basis there is for the Louie Legoshi ship. It's so close to being canon, I bet I don't even have to tell you that they both end up the series in heterosexual relationships. And their ship name is Lugoshi, like Bella Lugosi. Here's the thing, so much of the series' early conflict is asking the question, will Legoshi eat Haru? Will he succumb to the most primal of urges? And spoiler alert again, the answer is no. Legoshi never eats Haru. Legoshi eats Louie's leg. In the crux of Legoshi's New Year's battle with Riz, Louie recognizes the only way his friend can survive the night is if he eats some real meat. So he offers up his leg, the leg that represented his tragic upbringing in the black market. One of only 2 legs he has! A connection between Louie and Legoshi is hinted at more in the series' carnivore-herbivore dynamic later down the line. Again, spoilers for the end of the series, but Louie ends up in a political marriage with another deer, but he was embroiled in a sort of affair with a wolf, a female wolf named Juno. They sit next to one another on the train, and Juno laments that they can't be together, but she knows that Louie will never be able to forget their kiss, thanks to her carnivore teeth. As she leaves Louie, she says he'll never be satisfied unless he's kissing someone with fangs. And what? I feel like I'm losing my mind. So yeah, the Lugoshi ship kind of drives me crazy. I'm a little bit more insane for the making of this video. By the by, there is a lot more that I kind of wanted to talk about regarding Beastars, but we really don't have time and it's not really related to the original topic of the video. The history of their world is insane, but if I have the opportunity to bring one fact to your attention, it is this. They don't have Jesus. They don't have Christmas, which marks Jesus' birth. Instead, they have Rexmas on the same day, which marks the day a T-Rex rose from the dead after the meteor strike killed all the dinosaurs and grew wings, becoming the first bird and evolving the species. Now, if you're anything like me, you're thinking, that's not Christmas, that's more like Easter. And yeah, you're right, though at least based on our calendar, it's a lot closer to the circumcision of Christ, which marks the first time Jesus' blood was shed, and thus the beginning of man's redemption, and traditionally falls on New Year's Day, except they celebrated New Year's Day in Beastars, and nobody talked about circumcision. And another thing, I thought the call out of the specific date December 25th was weird because that implies they have the exact same calendar year as we do. But our months are all named after like ancient Roman stuff, like Roman gods and emperors. Was there ancient Roman Beastars? Did they worship arthropods or something? Was T-Rex Jesus sentenced to death by Pontius Pilate bird? While we're on the subject of dates and stuff, there was a collaboration Beastars had with Shibuya
today's
Station,
episode of
specifically
Man
for
Rants
Valentine's
into
Day.
Void.
Oh,
Please
Valentine's
like,
Day?
comment,
You mean
and
the day
subscribe
created
to see
to
more
celebrate Saint
completely
Valentine?
meaningless
The Roman
ramblings,
saint?
and maybe
Here's
like
a fun fact.
10%
Some people
writing
believe
of
that the reason
substance,
Valentine's Day is
depending on
celebrated
the
today
weather.
of romance
Visit
is because when one couple
twitter.com/thePurple39
paired in
to see more
Birds,
useful
like in
things you'd be
Beastars,
better off
the
without.
pattern keeps going deeper.
Write to your
Rabbits,
local
wolves,
senator
rats,
or
the wolves,
something,
Wolves!
and we'll see
Deliver us
you
from this cruel
another
jungle,
time.
Netflix. Season 3, Part 2.